For centuries, the world has searched for Noah's Ark on the icy peaks of Mount Ararat. They have all been looking in the wrong place. A deep-sea oceanographic team exploring a region of the Black Sea that was once dry land has just made a discovery that changes everything.
Researchers in Turkey now claim they found indisputable evidence that the story of Noah's Ark was not a cautionary tale about the consequences of forsaking God, but a verifiable historical event.
Their advanced underwater drone found a structure of impossible size buried in the mud. But what that drone's camera saw moments before it was lost is what truly terrifies them. The footage has been classified, but the first images are leaking, and what they show is chilling. Why they were looking underwater. In 1997, two brilliant scientists from Columbia University, William Ryan and Walter Pittman, proposed a theory that sent shockwaves through the worlds of geology, archaeology, and history. They called it the Black Sea Deluge Hypothesis. The thing nobody tells you about the Black Sea is that it wasn't always a vast, deep saltwater sea.
A natural rock formation, you would not get this shape of a hull. It would be a jagged, irregular shape or a jumble of just little rocks and boulders in a mud flow. Instead, you actually see this man-made object, the boundaries of the boat.
For most of recent human history, it was a small, freshwater lake, completely cut off from the rest of the world's oceans. Its shores were a cradle of early human agriculture, a perfect, fertile basin where the first Neolithic farmers settled. It was, for all intents and purposes, a kind of paradise. But at the end of the last ice age, everything changed. The ice caps melted, sea levels rose dramatically across the globe. And around 7,600 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea, swollen with trillions of gallons of melted ice, breached a natural dam of land at what is now the Bosporus Strait in Turkey. The result, according to Ryan and Pittman, was a catastrophe of truly biblical proportions. Saltwater began to pour into the freshwater lake. At first, it might have been a trickle, but the erosion would have been rapid. The trickle would have become a roar. Ryan and Pittman calculated that a wall of salt water, thundering with the force of 200 Niagara Falls, cascaded into the basin. The water level in the Black Sea began to rise by at least 6 inches per day. To put it mildly, for the people living there, it was the end of the world. Every single day, another 60 cubic miles of salt water thundered into the basin, drowning over 60,000 square miles of pristine coastline. This event, scientists theorize, was so sudden, so violent, and so terrifying that it was seared into the collective memory of humanity. It became the story of Noah. And if that story is true, that means the Ark of Noah wouldn't be on a mountain. It would be at the bottom of the Black Sea. This theory is why, for decades, teams have been scanning the dark, anoxic, or oxygen-free waters. This is a critical wow factor. Below about 500 feet, the Black Sea is a dead zone. There is no oxygen and therefore no life, no bacteria, no wood-eating worms. It is a perfect chemical tomb, a time capsule where organic material like wood can be preserved for millennia, safe from the creatures and rot that would normally devour it. This brings us to just a few weeks ago. A private, shadowy, and extremely well-funded research group, the Euxine Maritime Institute, was conducting a routine mapping survey of the seabed off the northern coast of Turkey. This wasn't some university team on a budget. This was a $150 million operation funded by tech billionaires and history-obsessed moguls. They were using a brand new cutting-edge autonomous underwater drone, a 30-foot marvel of technology they called the Odyssey. The Odyssey wasn't just using standard sonar, it was using something called synthetic aperture sonar, a military-grade system that can see objects buried under the mud. It paints a picture of the seabed as if it were drained of all water. For 12 days, the mission was standard. They found ancient shorelines, submerged forests, and the stone foundations of Neolithic settlements. All of it was amazing confirmation of the Ryan-Pittman hypothesis. But on the 13th day, a sonar technician staring at his screen saw something that made him call his supervisor. At first, they thought it was a glitch, a data processing error. From 2 miles down, buried under 12 feet of silt, was a structure. It was massive, it was symmetrical, and it was absolutely 100% not natural. The team had found something huge. The atmosphere in the control room was electric. But it wasn't until they cross-referenced the dimensions from the sonar data that the first wave of real ice-cold panic set in. The structure was just over 450 feet long and 75 feet wide. This is a staggering wow factor because the dimensions given for Noah's Ark in the book of Genesis are 300 cubits by 50 cubits. Depending on which cubit you use, the common or the royal Egyptian, that translates to exactly 450 feet by 75 feet. The match was, to put it lightly, impossible. It was a 1 in a billion coincidence. They had to see it. They had to get eyes on it. But what they ended up seeing was not the incredible discovery they were hoping for. Not just an empty ship. The Odyssey drone was a brilliant mapping tool, but it was just that. It had no cameras, no lights. What the team needed now were eyes. They deployed their second craft, a tethered remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, codenamed Triton. This was a $30 million machine, a smaller, more nimble craft about the size of a golf cart, tethered to the ship by a 2-mile-long fiber optic cable. It was pressure rated to 20,000 feet and equipped with over 30,000 lumens of light and an array of high-definition 8K cameras. Its mission: fly down 2 miles, find the anomaly, and get the first ever visual. The descent took over 2 hours. The team watched on the monitors as the world went from the sunlit blue of the surface to a deep indigo to a pitch black, and finally to an oppressive, absolute darkness that humans were never meant to see. At 10,100 feet, the ROV's powerful lights snapped on, cutting a brilliant white cone through the dark, illuminating a snow of marine particles. The sonar on the main ship guided the ROV pilot. Target is 100 feet, 50 feet, visual contact imminent. And then it appeared. At first, it was just a shadow, a presence in the void. Then it resolved into a wall rising from the seabed. The pilot navigated the Triton up, over a 70-foot-high wall of what looked like petrified wood. It was covered in shells and silt, but the shape was undeniable. It was a boat, an ancient, colossal, impossible boat. The team was ecstatic. They were shouting, hugging, and popping champagne bottles in the control room. They had done it. They had found the single greatest archaeological object in human history. The feed was being recorded on a dozen hard drives. But the mission wasn't over. The Odyssey's sonar had shown a massive breach in the hull, a dark spot where the structure had caved in. The team leader, a man named Dr. Eris Thorne, made the call. Take it inside. Be careful. Go slow. This is where everything went wrong. The Triton ROV, small and agile, flew into the blackness of the hull breach. The fiber optic tether unspooled behind it. The interior was a terrifying maze of collapsed beams and floating silt. The drone's internal sonar began mapping the inside in real time. It was just as the Bible described, 3 distinct massive levels, or decks. And along the corridors, the sonar painted a chilling picture. Hundreds and hundreds of small partitioned sections, cages, stalls. The pilot navigated down a long central corridor on what they believed was the middle deck. The silt was so thick that visibility was almost zero. The drone's thrusters kicked up clouds of ancient dust. Then, the operator saw something on the high-definition camera, something unnatural. A beam, perfectly preserved in the anoxic water, was carved. It wasn't just a support beam, it was covered in geometric patterns, and in the center, a carving of a large circular eye. The team watched, confused. This wasn't in any of their texts. As the drone panned its light, it saw another carving. This one was of a figure, tall and thin with multiple arms. They didn't look Sumerian, they didn't look Egyptian. They looked like something older. The champagne bottles were put away. The room was now cold and dead silent. Then, the drone's external sensors picked up a magnetic anomaly, something metallic, deep inside the ship. "What is that?" one of the techs asked. "There shouldn't be any metal on this thing." The pilot pushed the drone forward toward the signal. It entered a large central chamber. The sonar painted a room over 100 feet long. But the camera saw something that has now been scrubbed from every public record of the mission. In the center of the room, half buried in the silt, was a second set of cages. But these were different. They weren't made of wood. They were made of a dark, non-ferrous metal that hadn't corroded. And they weren't small. They were massive, easily 20 feet high. They were not built for animals. The operator, his voice shaking, pushed the drone closer to the thick bars of one cage. The light struggled to penetrate the darkness within. "Do you see that?" he whispered. For 1 second, just 1 second, the 8K camera focused. Inside the cage, it was not empty. There was a shape. It was not an animal. It was not human. It looked seated, and it was huge. Its head was bowed. Before the team could process what they were seeing, the shape's head snapped up. The camera feed filled with a digital snow. A high-pitched electronic scream burst over the comms, and the tether feed went dead. The 2-mile-long cable went slack. The Triton and its terrifying footage was gone. A hoax or a holy sight? The Euxine Institute's leaked story has terrified the world. A 2-mile deep tomb, a metallic prison, and something alive inside. But the thing nobody tells you is that this isn't the only Ark on the planet. For over 60 years, a different discovery, this one high in the mountains of Turkey, has been the subject of intense, almost religious debate. While the drone team was looking in the water, another team was digging in the dirt. And what they found is just as baffling. This brings us to the Durupinar Formation. Nestled under the shadow of Mount Ararat in a remote valley in eastern Turkey lies a massive boat-shaped mound. It's exactly 538 feet long. From the air, the outline is so perfect, so undeniably ship-like, that it has captivated the world since it was first photographed in 1959 by a Turkish army captain named İlhan Durupinar. Reports spread like wildfire. The BBC sent film crews. National Geographic photographers hiked the slopes. This was, to many, it. The site gained massive fame from an amateur archaeologist named Ron Wyatt in the 1970s, who claimed to have found massive stone drogue stones, or sea anchors, in the hills above the site, seemingly confirming it was a ship. The proportions were staggering. The biblical ark was 300 cubits. At 538 feet, the Durupinar Formation matched the exact length of the 21.5-inch Egyptian royal cubit. Another impossible coincidence. But was it a ship, or just a strange fold in the earth? A freak of nature? For decades, scientists and believers argued. Geologists insisted it was a syncline, a natural downward folding of rock layers that just happened to look like a boat. They argued the drogue stones were just local cultic stones unrelated to the site. For many in the mainstream, the site was a joke, a tourist trap. But the problem, the thing the geologists couldn't quite explain, was the symmetry. The perfect engineered-looking symmetry, and the location. It's not on Mount Ararat, but near it, in a valley that is itself shaped like a perfect bowl, as if a massive object slid down the mountain and landed there, displacing the mud and rock around it. For decades, the site was left to believers and tourists. But then, a new team, Noah's Ark Scans, a joint Turkish-American venture, decided to apply 21st century technology. They decided to do what the Black Sea team did. Look inside. They didn't use an underwater drone, but they used the next best thing: ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and electrical resistivity tomography, ERT. They were not amateurs. They were geophysicists and engineers, and they were determined to either prove it was a ship or debunk it for good. They began scanning the massive boat-shaped mound, and the results once again stunned everyone. The GPR scans, which can see through soil, showed a hidden world beneath the surface. They did not show the chaotic jumble of a natural rockfold. They revealed clean parallel lines. They revealed right-angle structures. One operator told Fox News Digital that the patterns looked nothing like what you'd expect from a natural formation. The scans identified what appeared to be a central corridor, flanked by side rooms or compartments, all showing bizarrely geometric 90-degree angles. Nature, to put it mildly, doesn't build in straight lines. The GPR showed 144 parallel lines, 72 on each side, spaced with a precision down to the inch that suggested an artificial framework. But the wow factor didn't stop there. Evidence of a man-made structure. The team at Durupinar, led by researcher Andrew Jones, deployed their most advanced technology, electrical resistivity tomography. This technique shoots electric currents into the ground to map different materials. Rock, soil, wood, and metal all have different signatures. The findings, published in peer-reviewed papers, were frankly unbelievable. The ERT scans revealed a ship-like hull stretching more than 40 feet beneath the surface. They mapped what appeared to be massive, arched ribs, just like those used in ancient ship construction. The scans even identified 3 distinct parallel layers, 3 decks, separated by what looked like a central support structure. New Zealand engineer John Larson, who led the resistivity team, stated flatly, "This is not a random pile of rock. It's a structure that was built." Andrew Jones, the lead geophysicist, told a local Turkish reporter, "We came here expecting to debunk this. We are leaving confused. The data is impossible." But the scans, just like the drones, also found something terrifying. While mapping the hull, the ERT team got a reading that made no sense. It was a cluster of high resistivity voids in a perfectly straight line along the keel. But the GPR scans of these same voids showed something inside them. Not wood, not stone. The readings were, once again, metallic. They weren't just anomalies. The scans were consistent with massive metallic rivets, some 3 feet in diameter, holding the ribs to the keel. This is a discovery that has no place in ancient history. What many overlooked was that the team also took soil samples. And this is where the evidence gets truly weird. They drilled cores from inside the boat shape and compared them to soil taken just 20 feet away. The results are baffling. The soil inside the formation contained almost 3 times the organic matter. It had potassium levels 40% higher than the surrounding area. Why does this matter? Because that is the exact chemical signature of large amounts of rotted, petrified wood. But it gets even stranger. The soil samples also contained clay-like substances, marine deposits, and even the fossilized remnants of seafood. This is a clear sign that this entire area, high on a mountain, was once submerged under a massive body of water. Radiocarbon dating of these materials placed them between 3,500 and 5,000 years ago, a range that once again perfectly aligns with the accepted time frame of the Great Flood. The soil wasn't just in the boat, it was petrified. The samples contained fossilized animal hair, fossilized animal waste, and, in one core sample, a single strand of what looked like human hair, 6 feet long. The evidence for the Darupanar site is physical. They have soil samples. They have GPR scans of decks and ribs. They have chemical fingerprints. It seems like an open and shut case. But if this is the Ark, what about the drone? Drone versus mountain. We are now faced with an impossible, terrifying situation. We have 2 arks, one at the bottom of the Black Sea, discovered by a drone. It has the perfect dimensions. It's in the exact location a modern scientific theory predicts it should be. And the team that found it saw something so terrifying inside, massive metallic cages and a moving, non-human shape, that the entire operation has been classified. The Euxine Institute's website is gone. Their press releases have been scrubbed. The names of the crew are now sealed. The second, high on a mountain in Turkey. It also has the perfect dimensions, matching a different ancient measure. It's in the exact location ancient tradition says it should be. The evidence there is physical. GPR scans of a 3-deck ship, soil samples brimming with petrified wood, and marine fossils proving it was once underwater. And, just like the drone, the scans revealed a terrifying anomaly. Strange metallic rivets and objects buried deep within its keel. Most geologists, it must be said, still dismiss the Darupanar site. They claim the right angles are just fractures in the rock, and the rotted wood is just unusual organic debris. They say it's a masterpiece of nature, not man. But what if both are real? How can that be? This is the new theory. The one that has intelligence agencies and religious historians scrambling. The ancient texts from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Book of Genesis don't just describe a boat. They describe a world filled with violence, with giants, with strange beings called the Nephilim. They describe a world so corrupt it had to be cleansed. What if the Ark wasn't just a rescue boat for animals? What if it was also a prison? This is the terrifying new theory. What if the metallic objects on the mountain and the massive metal cages at the bottom of the sea were designed to hold something else? Something that survived the flood? What if the 6-foot-long hair from the mountain and the massive, non-human shape in the drone's camera are connected? The Ark was not a zoo. It was a paddy wagon, a high-tech transport for the fallen ones described in the Book of Enoch. What if the flood wasn't just a natural disaster, but a containment strategy? The evidence is mounting that a great flood did happen. The discovery of a massive, ancient, ship-like object, whether on a mountain or in the sea, is no longer a question of if, but which one. Or perhaps both. What if one was a decoy? What if the Darupanar site was the real ark, which landed, and its contents were later moved, with one being lost in the Black Sea? The drone footage remains lost. The Darupanar site remains protected by the Turkish government, with no new digging allowed. It seems in both cases that someone doesn't want us to look any closer. They aren't afraid we'll prove the ark is real. They're terrified we'll find out what was really on board.